Amen. Good morning. How's everybody doing today? Yeah. All right. 3 of you are real excited. Hey, it's good to be here today. And didn't our worship team do phenomenal this morning? They always do. Love those guys. And mothers, we love you. We want to say thank you, thank you, thank you for all you do. When I was in high school, I can remember going to a camp. It was a church camp, and the speaker, he had all of us teenagers gathered around him. He was sitting on a stool, and he was going to ask us some questions and use those questions as some teaching moments with some of us. And one of the things he asked us was, who's more important, the father or the mother? Well, I was 16 years old, I had all the answers. And so I raised my hand and I said, well, it's obvious. We know the fathers are most important. Amen. Yeah, amen. And I gave him a really good reason of why I felt it was, and I was feeling pretty macho, and the discussion went on, and I don't need to go into great detail about the teaching. I can't even remember what the teaching was all about at that moment. But for whatever reason, that is the one question I remember him asking. Because many, many years later, God gave me children. And moms, we love you. You see, my mom, she raised 5 boys, 2 girls, and we had foster kids in our home, and so we always had many, many kids in our homes. And every day after school, my brothers were all pretty close in age, every day after school, we would come home, and you know what the first thing out of our mouths were? Mom! Sorry. Oh, man. We love you mothers, right? Oh, man. That was awesome, wasn't it? Sorry about that. The first things out of our mouths were, Mom! A little louder, you know what I mean? And Mom would feed us. She'd give us an after-school snack. She'd help us with homework. She'd take care of everything. Mom was just good at that. And it didn't happen very often, but every once in a while we'd come home and we'd say, Mom! And we'd hear this low voice say, she's not home. What do you need? And we're like, no, it's Dad, It was such a letdown because it was Dad, and we knew we weren't going to be fed, and we knew the homework wasn't going to get done, and we just knew we weren't going to be taken care of, and we were just hoping that the hours would go by and Mom would quickly come home and save the day. And there's something special about moms, right? And moms, we just want to say we love you, we appreciate you, thank you, thank you, thank you for all you do. And my mom, in about 2.5 hours, will be watching this. And so, Mom, love you. Big fan. So that'll melt her heart, I'm sure. But we love moms. Hey, we're on a series, and we're wrapping up the series today on some I am sayings that Jesus said. These outrageous claims that Jesus made about himself. And then as we watch Jesus' life lived out, they just came to be. Jesus said things like, I'm the resurrection and the life. He said things like, I'm the vine, you are the branches. And he said things like, I'm the good shepherd. And these last few weeks, we've been taking those I am sayings, and we've been applying them to our lives, and what does that actually look like in our lives? And so today, we're going to carry on with that. Before we do, I have a candle lit up here, and I know you can't see it way in the back, but maybe you can see it on the camera. Light is fascinating, isn't it? It is, trust me. Now, that doesn't move anybody right now because light is no big deal to us anymore. In fact, right now, just from a flip of the switch, we got spotlights on me. When we're about to dismiss, somebody's going to flip on a light switch and this whole place is going to illuminate and it's going to be bright in here. And when you go home, you're going to go into your kitchen, right? And you're going to walk into your kitchen, you're going to flip up a light switch. And light's no big deal to us anymore. But there was a day where light was a big deal, where families didn't have the electricity and the light bulbs. And at night, families would gather around maybe a candle just like this, and they would just stare into it and maybe even be fascinated by it. Light's exciting. We get excited about light. If you don't believe that, come over to my house some evening when we're having a bonfire and watch my children. I mean, they love fire. They get excited about fire. They take sticks and they put it in it and they start to wave it around and watch the lights go around. And if our yard doesn't start on fire, we're just happy about light. We get excited about it. Now, we don't get that excited about darkness, do we? I mean, the reality is we don't just stare at darkness and say, wow, that's beautiful. We don't get worked up about darkness. In fact, I've talked about this before here. If I brought a package of pure, dark, black darkness and came into this place, and I opened up that package of darkness, what would happen? Nothing. Because we have light. And so before we dive into this, I just want to make this clear to everybody. Light always overcomes darkness. If our light sky would hit the lights right now, we would still have this lit up. And from the very front to the very back, you would see this glow because light always overcomes darkness. If you have your Bibles with you, open up to the book of John chapter 8. John chapter 8, verses 12, and this is one of those I am statements that Jesus said about himself, a claim that he made about himself, and we're going to take that, pick it apart, and apply it to our lives, and what does that mean to us today? By the way, if you're new with us today, we just want to welcome you here. As I was standing in the back watching people come in, what I love about our church is we have new people here every week. Our church just keeps growing. Exciting things are happening. And if you're new with us today, we just want you to know before we dive into this, none of us here have it all together. None of us. But we all serve a Jesus who we absolutely believe in, and he has changed our lives. And we're going to talk about him today. And so my hope is that he'll begin to speak to you as well today. John chapter 8, verse 12 says this. When Jesus spoke again to the people, he said, I am the, say it with me, light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Jesus said this outrageous statement to this crowd, I am the light of the world. Now, before we dive into the light, I want us to talk about darkness for a little bit. There's things that darkness brings upon us, and there's a whole list of them, but I've just picked out three that really came to mind when I was putting this all together. Three things that darkness brings to us. The first thing is darkness brings uncertainty. Darkness brings uncertainty. It does, doesn't it? Have you ever been in a house with all the lights off? And your kids wake you up in the middle of the night, or you hear a noise in the middle of the night, and you try to wander around your house, and you forget where things are and where you put things, and you tripped over things. And I think many of us can tell stories of how they stubbed their toes. We've lived in our house for almost a year now. We live in a log home, and I'm convinced of this. Our home was built for hobbits. Because in the upstairs, I mean, we got weird angles, and you have to duck, and you have to move around. And I mean, even what I love about the shower in our house is it's just this crazy weird angle, and then when I'm tired, I can just prop my head against it. And we just got weird angles in our house. But at night, if you have to get something for your kids, I mean, you can bump your head and run into things. And darkness brings uncertainty. You just can't see things. Well, another thing that darkness brings is darkness brings fear, doesn't it? Now, for some of us men, that's tough to admit, right? Because we're macho. But we don't get afraid of things. But the reality is, if we're honest, at times in our lives when things were completely dark, it brought fear to us. When I was attending Olivet Nazarene University, my last semester, they sent us out for 9 weeks, what they called field placement. How this worked was all of us who were studying for the ministry would come to a dinner. We'd have bags packed, gas in the vehicle, ready to go. We didn't know where we were going, but we just went and we sat with a group of pastors, and they talked to us, and we talked to them and had a dinner with them. And when it was all over, one by one, the pastor would stand up and say to us seniors, okay, you're coming with me. You're coming with me. And we would go to that church for 9 weeks, and we would live with them for 9 weeks and just work under their mentorship. And so anybody here ever been to Middletown, Indiana? I know, me neither. That's where I was going. I was going to Middletown, Indiana, and at the time I met the pastor, but I didn't know where I was going to stay. I didn't know where I was going to live. I didn't know if I was going to live in a cabin, if I was going to live with the pastor. I didn't know if they're going to put me in this big, beautiful mansion. I mean, I didn't know any of this stuff. I just knew that I had my bags packed and vehicle ready to go, and I just followed them to Middletown, Indiana. And when I got there, you're going to think I'm making this up, but I'm not. I get paid to tell the truth, all right? I'm not making this up. When I got there, I didn't stay in a mansion. I didn't stay in a cabin. The guy who ran their youth program owned a funeral home. And I got the incredible opportunity to live in the upper apartment above the funeral home. Pretty exciting place, huh? And I can remember going up there and, oh, this is going to be different, and I'm going to have to get used to this, and I've never done this before, but, here we go. And I can remember talking with the pastor and unloading all my stuff and getting all ready to go, and we sat and talked for a while, but eventually the pastor left, and there I was by myself, and then it started to get dark. And outside, I normally don't notice these kind of things, but all of a sudden you could hear the wind kind of howling. And it was a real old place. It was an old house, and I was in the upper apartment, and the other residents were in the lower part, and I was up above, and when that wind would blow, you could just hear the creaking of the place, and you could hear everything shifting, and I got to be honest, I was a college student, senior college. I was pretty tough and macho in my mind, but when I was there all by myself and the lights were off, I was a scaredy cat. I was absolutely freaked out. And this is no joke. You know what I did for my first 2 weeks staying in this place? I slept with the lights on. No kidding. Slept with the lights on. I call my mom every night. Hey, Mom, how you doing? I love you, Mom. Hold me. I mean, every night I'd call her, and I'd have those lights on. And every once in a while, the funeral home director would call me up and say, oh, Mike, you won't believe this. I forgot to lock up the place. Can you lock up the place? I'm like, are you kidding? And so I'd walk through that place, and I'd sprint through the rooms and lock the doors and get up and flip all the light switches on, because fear comes with darkness, doesn't it? Let's be honest. Some of you would be freaked out too. I mean, it happens. Another thing that darkness brings is darkness brings trouble. Isn't it interesting when the sun goes down, crime goes up? I mean, you think about some of those things that you did when you were younger that got yourself in trouble. We usually didn't do it in the light of day, did we? I mean, we did it when the sun went down, when nobody was looking, and when the sun went down is when we typically got into trouble, and so many times darkness brings trouble. But in this passage, Jesus made this bold claim. He said, I am the light of the world. And so we're going to unpack that a little bit. And what does that mean in our lives? And how can we apply that to us today? And when it comes to light, there's three things that I want us to get today. The first thing is the light leads us. See, we believe that in this conversation that Jesus had with these people, it took place right after the Feast of the Tabernacles. And during that time, Jews from all over the region would come to Jerusalem, and they would come worship at the temple, and they would celebrate and remember those 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. And one of the things that they did every night except the Sabbath is they would light a candle. And they'd light a candle to remember how the Lord led them by night with a pillar of fire. In fact, it comes from the book of Exodus chapter 13, verse 21 through 22. It says this, by day the Lord went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud, and He guided them on their way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, so that they could travel by day or by night. Neither the pillar of cloud nor by day nor the pillar of fire by night left its place in front of the people. And so what Jesus was saying is He's saying, I am the light of the world. And as we celebrate this time when God led my people through the wilderness at night by the fire, I am the light of the world, and I want to lead you. I wonder today if some of us are looking for direction in life. I mean, I wonder today if some of us, as we're all walking through this journey that we call life, would just say, you know what, I got to be honest, I'm looking for direction today. I think about all our high school students. Graduation's coming up here real quick. They got a whole world in front of them. And as much as we like to say we have it all figured out, we don't. And I'm guessing many of them, even this morning, are saying, you know what, I'd like direction. What am I going to do with my life? I know some of you are like me, you have kids. You're trying your best to be parents. And you'd like to say you do everything right, but let's be honest, we don't, do we? And we just need somebody to lead us, somebody to guide us. And this incredible claim that Jesus made, he said, listen, if you're looking for direction, I am the light of the world. I can lead you. I can guide you, and you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to have it all mapped out, but I can be your light. He says, whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. And so, do you need direction today? Jesus is the light of the world. Well, not only does the light lead us, the light calms our fears. And again, let's be honest, we have fears, don't we? I mean, we really do have fears. A few weeks ago, I was in my back, or actually it was about 3 in the morning, and so I'm sleeping at that time, but my dogs, they were barking. Dogs bark, don't they? But my dogs barked and barked and barked and barked. They kept barking and barking, and it was to the point where it just woke me up, and I get up and I walk downstairs into our back door, and I open the back door, and there's my 2 dogs. They're standing back by the fence, and they're looking straight out, and they're just barking, barking, barking. So I'm worried about neighbors and what everybody else is thinking, so I stick my head out the door, and I said, Bear, Dakota, hush up. And after I said that, way back in my trees, in the darkness, I heard somebody laughing. Latifah, go check what's going on out there. There's somebody out there, and I couldn't see, and I was looking, and I couldn't see anything. The dogs were looking back there, and it was in complete darkness, and I got to tell you, I was overwhelmed with fear. And so you know what I did? I went into our kitchen, and I flipped on a light switch. And I went into the dining room, and I flipped on a light switch. And I went into the bathroom, and I flipped on a light switch. And I went in the hallway, and I flipped on a light switch. Went in the bedroom, flipped on a light switch. My wife said, turn it off. So I turned it back off, and just went from place to place, turning on the lights. And every once in a while, I'd peek out the window, you know. And with those lights on, for whatever reason, it made me feel better. It calmed my fears. Now, that's a goofy example of fear, but the reality is we have real fears in this life, don't we? I mean, real deal fears. I mean, for some of us in here today, man, we just look at our finances and we just don't see how ends are going to meet, and we're working hard and we're trying to get things done, but it's just not measuring up and it's not working, and we have fears about tomorrow. How are we going to get through this next week? I mean, they're real fears. We got fears about our careers and our jobs. With the world quickly changing, the economy changing, I mean, some of us have fears about what we're doing today, about our future. Tell you what, I talk about my kids a lot, but I have 3 beautiful kids, and I'm big fans of my kids. I love my kids. You know what my kids did this morning? My daughter, who's phenomenal, probably one of the best girls you'll ever meet, 10 years old, she got up 6 o'clock in the morning, got her little brother Camden up, and they made my wife, their mom, breakfast in bed. Pretty awesome, isn't it? I didn't tell them to. I didn't even think about it. They told me it was Mother's Day. I'm like, oh, thanks, guys, you know. They made waffles, an orange, and a banana, and they made it in the shape of a smiley face, you know. I know, awesome. They must have some dad, you know. But anyway, my kids, I mean, 10, 9, and 7, and they're just beautiful, and I love them, and man, we're running all over, keeping up with their stuff, and I love watching my kids, but I got to be honest with you, I watch the news, and I look at what's going on around the world, and I have some real fears about the world that my kids are growing up in. I mean, I think, what kind of things are they going to face when they're my age? I mean, what kind of things are they going to deal with when they're my age? What's the world going to look like when they reach my age? And when I think about those things, fear creeps in, and this is going to sound really weird, but I even think, what about their kids someday? I mean, those are fears that we have, aren't they? I mean, we have fears when it comes to relationships, fears when it comes to money, fears when it comes to family issues, fears when it comes to church issues. And I think if we were honest, we'd all say that, you know what, we have real fears in this life. But listen to what God's Word says. Psalm 23:4 says this, "Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me." See, I believe this today. Jesus said, I'm the light of the world. Whatever fear you may have today, I'm the light of the world. You can run to me, you can come to me, and I will calm your fears. I will take care of your fears. And so whatever your fear might be today, wouldn't it be something, instead of trying to handle it ourselves and fix it ourselves and tough it out, we would just run to Jesus? The one who made this claim about himself that said, I am the light of the world. Well, thirdly, the light exposes the darkness. The light exposes the darkness. You know, I know we have police officers in this place and some retired police officers in this place. You know what police officers carry with them, right? Police officers carry with them guns, tasers. But I got to believe this is one of their most important tools that they carry with them is a flashlight. And when they go into dark, scary places where trouble is being stirred up, I bet they can shine that light on and exposes whatever's going on in the darkness. We talked about at the beginning that trouble takes place in darkness. Darkness brings trouble. And I wonder in here sometimes if some of us have gotten ourselves into trouble. I mean, we can come into a church like this and a service like this, and it's all lit up, and we have fun, and we sing songs, and everybody's all slicked up, dressed up, they smell good, they look good, and we can really do a good job of playing the part, but we eventually leave this place, and we leave maybe the light, and we get in places where nobody else is looking, and we do things that we know we shouldn't be doing. Scripture, we call it sin. I mean, in the light, we don't do those things. I mean, it'd be humiliating if we did some of those things, but in the darkness, we do these things. Nobody else is looking. I tell you, I've had so many of my pastor friends who in the light, they would come and they would preach the gospel of Jesus Christ, and man, they could do some amazing things, and they were great preachers, and they were great teachers, and they were great administrators, and they could do so many great things in the light, but when they left the place, many of them had these dark places that they would go, and eventually, the light would expose them. Many of them had to step out of ministry because of things they did when nobody else was looking. I tell you, as a pastor, I just want you to know that even in this passage of Scripture where Jesus said, I'm the light of the world, there's a story immediately before where a woman was caught in the act of adultery. I mean, just an incredible story. She was caught in the act. Caught in the act. Guys drug her out, and they were planning on stoning her. They're going to throw rocks at her. And Jesus, in His infinite mercy and wisdom, He gets down on the ground, He starts writing stuff in the ground, and we don't know what it is. We can only imagine what it was. He said, hey, any of you who have never sinned, I want you to go ahead and throw the first stone. You know what happened? One by one, they left. Jesus gets down next to her, and He picks her up, and I can picture this in my mind, looks in her eyes, and says, no one condemned you? She says, no one, sir. She just got caught in the act. And Jesus said, neither do I. But He doesn't end it there. He says, go and stop sinning. Go and sin no more. And then the next part, Jesus makes this crazy claim about Him being the light of the world. I just got to believe in a crowd like this. And you guys know I love you. You know I'm far from perfect. I mean, far from perfect. But listen, I just know in this crowd, there's probably some of you doing some things that you just know that you shouldn't be doing. And even while those things are going on, you just have this voice constantly pestering you, saying, hey, stop doing this. Stop doing this. You shouldn't be doing this. I just wonder if that's Jesus screaming at you, saying, I'm the light of the world. You don't have to do this anymore. Everyone who does evil hates the light. It will not come into the light for the fear that their deeds will be exposed. But whoever lives by the truth comes into the light, so that it may be seen plainly that what they have done has been done in the sight of God. So I'm going to wrap it up with this. The answer to your uncertainty today is the light. The answer to your fears today, and we have them, don't we, is the light. The answer to the trouble that you found yourself in, the trouble that you're getting yourself into, is the light. 1 John 1:5 says this. This, in essence, is the message we heard from Christ and are passing on to you. God is light, pure light. There's not a trace, get this, there's not a trace of darkness in Him. So when I'm uncertain, when I'm in fear, when I'm in trouble, I'm going to run to Him. I'm going to go to Him. Like everybody bow their heads and nobody looking around. I'm not going to embarrass you. I'm not going to call you out, but how many would be honest with me today and say, you know what, I'm just living in uncertain times in my life right now. I have some uncertain things that I just don't know about or which direction to go. Would you just quickly put up your hands and put them down? All over this place. How many say, you know what, I got some legit real fears today that I'm really wrestling with, that consume me. Would you just put up your hands real quick? All over this place. Now listen, I'm not going to embarrass anybody. I'm not going to call you out. I just want us to be honest today. How many say, you know what, there's some things that I've been doing that I just know they're not right. And I'm in trouble. Just quickly put up your hand. Yeah, all over this place. Jesus said, I'm the light of the world. I want to run to Him today. I want Him not just to be the light of the world. I want Him to be the light in my life. As we sing this next song, we're just going to ask you to respond any way that Jesus wants you to. You can come up. We got altars up here. You can stay in your seats. But let's, this morning, just go to the one who is the light of the world.